Here we go, live,
We're
back
live.
again, and I'm prepared this week. I've just done the tweet, so it's out there. I don't have to work on the fly. But hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Rest, round 4, episode 6 of the season, I think, or 5. I can't remember. But joined as always by Nathan and like I feel like we always start this episode by just briefly speaking about the team that we don't mention at the start of this, but stressful despite happiness, if that makes sense, over the weekend.
Oh, look, as you would have noticed one of my tweets on my Carlton account, I wasn't too happy with that. Usually we start this show by just throwing abuse at each other about how right or wrong we were with predictions the week before. And I think, look, I think I did pretty well. I'm happy with my efforts.
It's a little bit of a callback to last week. I actually did look at the predictions, and I actually have tallied them down. So I've got the predictions and I've got the tips from the last 3 rounds, which we'll touch on when we tip at the end of the episode. It's interesting. I'll put it that way. It's definitely an interesting tally, and based off last week's, I think if we can remember. I don't think I've done too well, and I can see, but I'm just going to put it out there. I don't think I've done too well, and I think this show is going to be a lot more of you gloating, considering some things that happened over the
I'll take
weekend.
it.
But yeah, of course you'll take it. What a surprise!
Well,
But yeah, if we're going to touch on, basically, we're going to touch on a lot of different storylines that happened throughout the weekends of footy. The Cats, what's going to happen with them? Brisbane, they flat track bullies. Touch on St Kilda. Touch on the Showdown. West Coast as well, and then we'll finish up with the MRO as always. Some interesting things that happened in the MRO as well, involving the they who shall not be named, and then we'll finish off with the round 4 preview. So let's just crack into it. Let's stop effing around. I think it's a bit too early to swear, so I'll censor myself. Let's touch on the Cats. Let's touch on the Cats because this is probably the most surprising storyline coming out of the weekend, or coming out of the first 3 rounds, especially. They head into the Easter Monday clash 0-3, and it's a position in which not a lot, if anyone, thought that they would be in, considering obviously coming off a premiership and their fixture list at the start of the season, whilst not being very easy, very winnable games throughout. We spoke about this last week, and we touched on all the sides that were 0-2 at the time. We spoke about Geelong, and we were like, they should get things going and they should start to fix things up. But being 0-3, losing to Gold Coast, I know it was up there, and they do perform better up there, but quite concerning start to the season. And I know you are enjoying this so much, so I'll let you take the floor with this a little bit.
look, as a supporter of a team who knows all too well about losing, when a team who knows all too well about winning starts losing, of course, you got to enjoy it a little bit, right? Because
Yes.
these fans don't understand. They don't
They've
get it.
they spent a decade at the top plus. Actually, they've spent 15 years, 16 years, probably even 2 decades if we're going to round off at the top. And here's a fact for you: they've missed finals once. No, they missed finals twice in our lifetime. That's a stat for you. And Carlton have only made finals 4 times. So that's a stat for you.
It is, but it's very surprising because they didn't really play badly in their first 2 weeks. Like Collingwood, they were ahead for most that game. Like Collingwood switched it on in that third quarter, but like they were never out of their depths. And even with Carlton, they sort of they're probably a bit worse than with Collingwood. Carlton figured them out, but I don't know. You just thought even if they were going to play bad against Gold Coast, they would at least get over the line, just because. But Gold Coast also had a lot to play for, I think, which probably didn't help. But they do just look a bit disjointed at the moment. Whether it's Premiership hangover, could be, because I don't know. The motivation doesn't really look like it's there anymore. They just, it's not. It doesn't feel like it did last year.
Yeah. I wouldn't say complacency, because I'd like to think they've still got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Some of those players, especially like Dangerfield and stuff, who players like Dangerfield who have been doubted their whole career and stuff like that. I feel like they should still have a chip on their shoulder, and I think this is a fantastic point, which was something that I was going to bring up. They were 22 points up halfway or in the back end of the third quarter against the Pies, and they were in control of that game. A game that really mirrored, in a lot of ways, their qualifying final that they played last year. Very high intensity, high tempo, high kind of octane, really physically demanding system. Maybe it is a little bit of maybe it's a thing of they hit the lead, I wouldn't say convincing lead, but a 22-point lead closing in on three-quarter time when you know you've just won the premiership is a little bit of a commanding lead as well. I think they'd kicked, 4 goals in a row? They kicked 3 goals in a row to extend that lead or to get that lead to where it was. So they were riding high and they were kind of up there in terms of intensity and stuff. So you wouldn't say, like, it's almost as if that kind of moment, it was almost a sliding doors moment. I don't really want to say anything around sliding doors moments. It's just very early in the season, but if they can hold out that game, considering the circumstances of it, and obviously the nature of it, like it's mentioned here about the high intensity, maybe that puts them in much better stead, and maybe that just completely drained them of all confidence and energy and willingness to kick on with their season, because they look a shell of their former self. They just look so they do not look like a premiership team, which, considering 4 games ago they were the best team in the comp by a country mile. It's quite concerning, the drastic shift. And they haven't really lost that many players. Like, Selwood's obviously the main one, but apart from that, there haven't been really too many notable absentees.
Like with Geelong, you're expecting this is going to change, but also it's so, like, it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about because, like, where are they at? Like, what direction do Geelong have? Like, they sort of reached the pinnacle of what they ever could have imagined. Most of those players will be exiting, relatively soon. You've got a bunch of young kids who have come in, haven't really experienced that much success. So, of course, they're going to want to reach the top. So there's, like, I don't know, I feel like there's an unhealthy balance of players in terms of their mindset in that team. I don't know what a collective goal would be, because I don't know. I just don't. Based off these 3 weeks, you would assume they're not going to make a grand final, but they also were, like, 4-3 at the round 8 or wherever last year. They won 16 in a row or whatever. So you can never underestimate Geelong. Like, that's what we've learned. Don't ever count them out.
Yeah, I once again, I don't think you can. The talent is stupid, right? To count them out is ridiculous. I do tend to agree. I don't think they will miss the 8. However, only one side in a long time has made the 8 from 0-6, and I know that's looking quite a fair ways away, considering that they're 0-3. But they've got, obviously, good Easter Monday, which is always a competitive game, really, no matter where either side is placed. They've got West Coast in Adelaide, which, I mean, you'd think they should get that job done. They should get the job done there, and then they've got Sydney in Geelong. In fairness, but also Sydney will be a side that will be in a similar position to Geelong as well, kind of looking to bounce back off a semi-ish poor start, as considering Sydney's most recent game. I know they had 2 good wins to start the season, but I mean, where do you see? Do you see this being just a 3-game blip? Because, like you said, their performances haven't been bad. The Collingwood game, like I said, 22 points up. They fell away at the end against Carlton. Yeah, I think Carlton hit a 26-point lead, I think, around about a similar margin, and then they clawed it back. And then they were poor on the weekend, right? I think there's no excusing that. They were quite poor. I think it either goes one or 2 ways with this. You're looking at this just being 3 poor games and they're finally going to kick themselves into gear and push on with the season, or what we've seen from these 3 games so far, most notably in the Carlton game, is their reliance on individual performances. I understand they have had some injury issues. Obviously, the defense has been quite depleted, especially. But Jeremy Cameron, especially against Carlton, but also in a similar vein in other games as well, has been a player to get them out of tricky situations and has been a player to really mask a lot of bad football at times. I mean, without him against Carlton, Carlton win by 10 goals. Maybe not 10 goals, but Carlton win quite comfortably if Jeremy Cameron doesn't play that game. And I know it's quite rich in saying, yeah, but if Charlie Kono doesn't play, but I feel like other teams aren't. I don't think there is a team more reliant on. I don't think there is a team challenging for top 8 more reliant on one player than Geelong with Jeremy Cameron right now. When he's not firing, Geelong aren't doing well, and we saw it. Even when he did play one of the best games I've ever seen against Carlton, it still wasn't enough to get the job done. So, do you kind of subscribe to that notion in a sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with that point. You could also say they're relying on mids like Dangerfield to also play well, but I don't know. It's just very hard to analyze them because, let's say they win the next 2 weeks, which you would look, if they lose to Hawthorn, their season's over. Like, that's probably the reality. I genuinely don't think they will make the top 8 being 0-4 because...
Well, we saw last year with Port, went 0-5 and had a good back end and still couldn't get the job done.
Because you're playing teams, by the back end of the season, you're playing teams who are also competing for the top 8. It becomes, you're battling against yourself in a way. So, look, if Essendon could batter Hawthorn, you'd assume they should do the same and even worse. But they could win the next 2 weeks and go into Sydney pretty complacent, thinking, okay, we're back. We've won these last 2 games. And you'd probably assume by a decent margin, let's say 5 goals for each game. You go into Sydney, you just think, oh, we're back. But I think Sydney's probably the game we'll realise if they're genuinely going to contend again to get to the finals because it's in Geelong, so you would assume that's their fortress, right? Teams don't go over there and win very often.
Yeah.
And B, it's Sydney, they're going to be top 4 at the end of the season.
Yeah.
One of your challenges as they were last season, so I think we won't be able to make a final verdict on them until that Sydney game because, it could be as soon as next week if they lose to Hawthorn, but assuming they beat Hawthorn and West Coast, I feel like that Sydney game will be a good indication. Usually you sort of figure out each team by that round 6-7 mark. You've seen enough of them, enough, form flows with these teams. So that's where I stand with them.
Yeah, I would agree, but also disagree in the sense that if they lose to Sydney and lose convincingly, then their season's done. Regardless of how they perform against Hawthorn and West Coast, that's their season's done. I wouldn't necessarily say if they beat Sydney, they're back, because we've seen teams in the past get up for big games like Friday night, prime time, big side, at home, all these factors. We've seen teams live up to those expectations and live up to those games and haven't really been able to back it up. So if I quickly check the game after Sydney, the game after Sydney, they versus the Bombers at the G. So once again, that's probably a game in which they're going to be looking at. Be like, if they win their next 4 up until, if they win the next 3 up until that Essendon game and win that, then they're back. I feel like it's quite an interesting thing, and I once again agree with this comment here from Rowan. Good sides and teams who win flags win games where they don't perform well. If you play that Gold Coast game last year, they win that game. That's my concerning factor, because last year they just had the knack of winning games even when they weren't playing well. Whereas this year it could be a different Geelong side and a side that isn't kind of performing it to the minimum standard. I think that's what it is. Because we all know their maximum is elite. Their maximum against Collingwood, their best against Collingwood, outstanding, right? Their worst and their flaw, major issue. So that's where I think we can kind of sit overall on them. Are you concerned? Just briefly, as we wrap this point up, are you concerned, or is it come back to me in a week and depending on the result, then I'll be concerned?
I'm going to say yes, I'm concerned, just to avoid looking at the time so we can move on. Yeah, yes, I'm concerned with no reason, because we've spent 15 minutes on Geelong and we still have,
Relax. It's fine.
Relax.
It's not like us to go over time as well. Just chill.
Don't say us. It's not an us thing.
It is.
It's not a nothing. It isn't a
is.
nothing.
It
Anyways,
is. All
are
right,
you
let's move on.
concerned? Or are you concerned? Give your answer for that one.
No, but
No.
come to me in a week, and I may be. All right,
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
If you want to hurry up, then we'll speak about
Oh.
Brisbane quickly. Then, this is something that once again you're probably smug as all shit because of your. Oh, I predict everything right. I'm so smart.
No,
Once again,
you said it, not
you.
me.
Yeah, I did say it, and you're thinking it, and everyone else is probably thinking it as well.
Yeah.
You're obviously massive on the Brisbane being the flat track bullies. They showed shocking away at Port, brilliant at home to Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. And horrible again on the weekend against the Dogs. I say horrible, it was only 14 points, but geez, that was the most boring and frustrating game of football I think I've ever watched. And I watched Carlton win 2 games in a season, which says a lot. Their forwards can't kick goals. Eric Hipwood and Joe Danaher. I mean, we're speaking about some dysfunctional system when we speak about Geelong. That's a dysfunctional forward line if ever I've seen one. And take it away, my friend. Are they flat track bullies? Come on, let's hear you indulge in your correct predictions, like you always do.
No, well, look, my prediction was not based off the fact I thought they were flat track bullies. It was more based off history because Bulldogs lost their first 2 last year and they played Sydney on a Thursday night at Marvel and they won. And I was same scenario this year. That's why backing off history.
Right.
But the answer is yes, they seem like they are.
Okay.
I mean, and I backed them. I thought, okay, well, they've got to be serious at some point, and I thought they would just blitz the normal season, but they are just really bad on the road, and it probably goes back to that whole point on the Gabba and adapting to that game style. Then you take that game style to bigger grounds, and look, Marvel's not huge. It's not.
The G.
Like, I wouldn't say it's not like the G, but I don't know. They just struggle, and maybe it's the whole thing of. We've experienced this as Carlton supporters of being favourites. It changes your mindset.
It does.
And I think they would have expected to go into that favourites, clearly. I mean, the Bulldogs were shocking in the first 2 weeks and showed no promise of turning it around either. I don't know. I wouldn't say Bulldogs played fantastically either, but they just turn into a completely different side. And that forward line can really just... It is literally the difference between them winning and losing. They've got to function in midfield. And to be fair, their backline, they conceded 67 points. 67 points doesn't usually win you a game, 70% of the time. So it's purely their forward line. It really is awful at times. It is the difference between them being good and bad. Well, there's no neutral ground. They're just either good or bad.
Well, if we look at their forward line, Gunston kicked 3 goals too, had 6 marks, and he turned it on late, kicked 3 goals, 3 goals in a row, 3 goals in relatively quick succession in the second half. So probably a tick for his game, right? 3 goals, 6 marks, 10 touches, 1 tackle, maybe a little bit disappointing, but probably a tick for that. When we look at Eric Hipwood, 6 touches, 1 goal, 3 marks. Massive cross, and I mean this. Yes, I don't think I can speak about this footballer enough, and it's not in a good way. Joe Danaher kicked 4 behinds from 7 touches and had 3 marks. If we're looking at dream team points, I know it's not a great factor, but Danaher and Hipwood were in their bottom 5. And then Lincoln McCarthy was below that, and Jeremy Cameron Charlie Cameron even was not far above that. It's so frustrating to watch because the talent is clearly there. The talent is clearly there. Danaher at his best is a great player. Hipwood has shown in flashes. We all know Charlie Cameron at his best is probably one of the best small forwards, if not the best small forward in the comp. Jack Gunston played well, and that's something that they would be looking to do in the future. Lincoln McCarthy as well is probably the next rung down, but he didn't play well. It's just so frustrating. It's infuriating because I think this is a great point again. Their potential, their ceiling is stupidly high. We've seen at their best when that forward line's clicking, when that midfield's clicking, they look scary. But then they can show what they showed on Thursday and just be a basket case.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we'll touch on Thursday tomorrow night later. But like, is their ceiling actually that high? Like,
It is. It is.
But when do they show it for what? A couple games at home, and then it disappears. Is their ceiling? If their ceiling is at the Gabba, then there's no chance of winning a premiership.
Yeah, but you have to. I mean, look at their game against Richmond last year at the G. They were what? I know they ended up losing that game, but that first half was very, very good. Right? They're very, very good. They were like 7 goals up or whatever. That is the ceiling. That is their ceiling. But it relies on. I mean, I'm going to speak about Dano and Hipwood again because they infuriate the life out of me. If I was a Brisbane supporter, geez, I don't think I'd be able to keep my composure. But it was. They look like I heard this comparison a couple of times. from a couple of different people. I can't quote it exactly, but both of them look like just they look like they're not ready for AFL. That's what they look like. They look weak. They look kind of flimsy. They don't look like when I think about Tom Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron, I think commanding, like intimidating forwards. Charlie Kerner, Harry Mackay, similar extent, similar sort of thing, right? Look at the best forwards in the past, Buddy Franklin, same sort of deal. Even Jack Reaver, intimidating to a certain extent, right? Hipwood and Danaher just look like you can bully them. I feel like I could play on them and keep them to 2 goals. That's how I feel about them. Maybe not 2, 3 at a push, right? I just don't.
3, yeah.
I just don't feel like they're any good. Like they look like Bambi on ice, both of them, and they don't. They look like they are scared of pressure, and they look like when shit it hits the fan, and the onus was on them to perform. They look like they shit the bed and not good enough in the slightest. And it's disappointing because both of them are great players. They're just not showing it, and it's extremely frustrating.
I sort of wonder to an extent, do Brisbane believe their own hype? Like, I feel like that plays a little bit of a part because it goes back to that whole favourites thing. I don't know. Like, part of me wants to think they're just complacent, think they'll walk in and win, but they also just look crap. Like, I think they just genuinely just can't play well when they're taken out of a ground that is just so like planted inside them. I don't know. It's so hard because even with the Port game, and we've seen with Port now, we'll touch on that later.
We'll touch on
that later. But they just seem to forget what they're all about. It becomes this game of individuals. And I think especially with, Danaher and Hipwood, it's all about them. Like, it is all about them. It's not how did the forward line perform. It's how did Hipwood and Danaher perform. Did they perform good? No, Brisbane have lost. I mean, like, where's the like? You've got Charlie Cameron in there who should be coming up quite a lot, but I feel like they need like just a good medium-sized forward like that can just be put
Jack
in the
Dunstan.
middle. I find him quite tall though. I feel like he's similar
He's
to
the
height.
smallest one. He's the smallest one. But
I feel like, but at his age, I don't think he would play that role fantastic. But like, even they've got like Darcy Wilmot. I like the way he plays. Like, he'd be a good type of player to just chuck in the mix and like create some movement. Like, it's there's just something so unlikable about Brisbane. Maybe just because we're expecting something to happen and it just doesn't seem to happen. But I just don't understand how they can't ever get it together. How long's it been now? And it just is like the same thing over and over. And even reading, the comments on socials after the game, that's all the supporters go on about. Like, it just same, new year, different shit. That's the vibe I get with them now. So, such a weird team.
I feel like this comment was directed towards you, just to stroke your own ego even more.
Let me read it. I'm beginning. Ash is beginning to sound so. Well, hey, what? He isn't those type of players. He is not that type of player. I mean, I said the week before I didn't agree with his rising star norm because it's like, oh, okay, 31 touches. Oh, good, you played well. How many players rack up touches and probably don't do a lot with those touches? Quite a few. But he's a good player. He knows how to get the footy, but his execution with the ball is still so like it's the same as how he did it in under 18s. He's got a very like just sort of an exit clearance kick mindset, which I understand you have to do that sometimes, but they're very inaccurate kicks.
Yeah, he's got the Ed Kerno about him.
Yeah, like he's a very smart footballer, but I guess he's not really playing the same role as Walsh and Dacos. Like he's not. It's hard to compare him to those two specifically. He's been put in a team that I don't know. They've learnt to play without him, and now you're putting someone even a talented player in the mix. Now they're learning to play with him again.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
he's a good inclusion. It's just I don't.
Yeah,
Brisbane was the best team for him to be put into.
Well, I know. I mean, bit ironic that that you're the one speaking about time and you just ranted about a first year player for 5 minutes. But I will wrap it up quickly. But I was listening to Mitch Cleary and Sam McClure's podcast on the way to uni this morning, and they spoke about David Robertson and Jarryd Lyons, and they spoke about those two players who are playing in the VFL but are definitely capable of playing AFL football. And played last year for the most part. And Brisbane were what? I know they weren't. They didn't. It wasn't their best year, especially considering the last couple. But they were still very good. Made the prelim, of course, right? So upsetting that midfield mix, kind of. I know we said their midfield is quite good, and that's probably not the root of their problems. But upsetting that midfield mix could kind of make a bigger impact on the rest of the team because it's just another cog that isn't fitting. And when one cog isn't working with the next one, it's not going to work with the next one, and it's not going to work with the next one. Maybe their forward problems are because their midfield aren't supplying in an adequate way. I don't think it is that. I just think their forward line's not that great or not performing to a good level. But I think it's an interesting point to raise.
Well, to quickly wrap up on the opposite side of that game, let's just quickly shout out to Jamara. Terrific.
Yes.
What do you stand for? Great.
Absolutely.
Terrific. Just didn't want to leave that out.
Yes, absolutely. Probably should put that on their run sheet. Probably a little bit of an oversight. But yes, that was
great moment.
Very, very good, very touching, and I thought he handled himself superbly, especially post game. Such for a young kid who's been under so much media scrutiny over the last couple of years, handled himself superbly and was a fantastic moment. And it was very fitting. He kicked the first and last goals, and good to see that. Great to see that. So thank you for reminding me. Probably isn't an oversight, but we move. Let's move on to another side, which maybe this one will bring you down to size a little bit and bring you back down to earth because you don't like them and they're 3-0. And
no,
you don't.
I don't like their game. I just don't like their game style. Gets a bit boring. But I didn't say I don't like the team. I just after watching them nearly every week, look, I said I don't like watching them because the game style just gets a bit boring to watch. But in terms of them winning, could have picked that from a mile away, as I did say last week about Essendon. I don't rate them still, and St Kilda made easy work of them for most of that game. 34-0 start. No Essendon came back, but you saw the pressure. Like, what happened? They were coming back 61-0, and then they kicked 5 goals unanswered to finish it. Like, come on, that's Essendon, isn't it?
We're speaking technically about
St Kilda. Well, I know, but St Kilda kicked 10 goals unanswered if you think about it. The first 5 and the last 5.
Yeah, how good are they? What's that exciting game style through the corridor football? Mason Wood winning the.
That was better. That was better to watch, but it was a better game to watch. Look, I'm just saying. I've seen a lot of the first 2 games. Just tough on the eyes sometimes.
You watch.
They have winner. It's winnable football. It's just sometimes you're like, okay.
You're probably
make something happen.
You're probably more passionate about St Kilda than Carlton, which is quite funny considering.
Because I have to go to the games and I might have something more important, but I am sitting there, so I might as well make the most of just watching it. And it's actually okay because it's St Kilda games. I'm neutral, right? I just sit there and I can just relax. We've taken this so out of context now, but
yeah, I know.
tell me about your perspective. Tell me about your perspective with the Saints. What are you liking from them?
I like Mason Wood. I think he's going to win the Brownlow. I hope his shoulder's all right because he's the definition of new coach, new position, new player, and I kind of find it quite funny how he got rejected from North, literally the bottom of the barrel, like at the bottom of the barrel, like that is rock bottom. You get delisted from North, that is like I'd rather be playing VFL than be delisted from North, and he's probably got 8 Brownlow votes from 3 games. Mental, right? Mental. Spoke about Jeremy Cameron potentially win the Brownlow last week. Last week. Keep an eye on Mason Wood.
I'm interested in the Brownlow predictor, which I'm going to quickly just look at on the side whilst you talk about the jerseys.
Yeah, thank you. Great segue. I will speak about the jerseys.
That was a good segue.
And there's a reason why I wore this, and not this top in particular, but because it has one of these. Collar. It has a collar. It has a collar, and I'm very passionate about this. And if you have 2 eyes, which I assume most people do. If you only have one eye, I apologize. But I've got some posters behind me. That's the background for my podcast, 2 Foot Tackle Podcast. Check it out. And
I was waiting for that one. I was waiting for that.
So as you can tell, love me the round ball, and the round ball. I love the round ball, and I love retro football tops, right? And most of the good ones have collars on them. And when I saw that kit on the weekend, I looked at it and I just melted. I was like, that is just good. The collar just fit. One slight criticism, I potentially would have wanted the collar a little bit tighter. If you could see here, the collar like comes down into like a little bit of a V, kind of. A little bit tighter on the collar, but I like it. I like it, and that just makes me like St Kilda even more, and made me want them to win even more. But that was my main takeaway. I can't really speak about the game. You were there, so can you speak about it?
I wasn't at the game. I've said I wasn't at the game.
Oh yeah, you weren't at the game.
I wasn't at the game, but it was lovely. It was lovely. Even the patch of the logo.
Yeah, very nice.
Superb. Yes. Can't get better than that. That was. Yeah. It was amazing. I was like, damn, I should buy that. And then I sort of realised I'm not a St Kilda supporter, so I don't know why I would buy it. I don't know what you sort of be to me. But
probably
it is
don't have $120 spare as well.
No.
Or maybe you do. Maybe you do. Do you?
If I was on your $1 multis, I might have that money. But, But anyways, look at what this show's turned into. But
it is great content.
It is good content. Well, might as well segue and move on to the other Saturday night game.
No, we're not. I want to speak about St Kilda a little bit more. All right? Okay.
All right. Well, we're speaking about. I don't know what else there is to talk about it, but we're still talking.
I know because I had a point and I lost my point, so maybe we will move on. Oh no, I figured it out. St Kilda home games at the MCG. Thoughts?
I hate it.
Without notice.
Okay. I hate it.
I
don't like any. No, it's just
not
weird.
like you to be pessimistic.
Why would you want? I'm sorry, but how much of that fan base was St Kilda on Saturday?
A lot.
Why would? No,
were you at the game? Were you?
I've seen highlights. I watched the replay. So
you did not. Well, bits of the replay.
Oh, my mother was watching the replay, so I was watching it with her. So I did watch, but yeah, thank you. So I did see a bit of it. Okay, no, they just don't draw the crowd for the MCG. Like I say, if you said, okay, throw North at the MCG for a home game.
No, because North suck. St Kilda are good. There's a difference. Also, I have said North suck quite a bit, and I've just realised what's happening on Friday, Arvo. So, North are great. North, top four contenders, I reckon. But yeah,
I'm not a fan. Not a fan.
What a surprise. Anyway, finally wrapping up, St Kilda, are they going to do anything, or is this just a patch of form?
No, I think they could do something, honestly, because I don't think this season there's many terrific teams, in all honesty, and they're banking the wins early as well. So we know that's important, especially towards the end of the season. They'll get players back, but I don't really take that into account because I sort of think if it, what's the saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You keep going until you need to change something, and they're a great chance. They'll beat Gold Coast this week because Gold Coast in Melbourne, but
I so want them to lose.
they're every chance to do well. Like it could be a blip, but I don't know. How many teams are they going to lose to with that game style? Like,
Not many.
Not many. That's why.
Huh. Top 4 Saints confirmed. Let's move on.
I didn't say that. Anyways.
It's all right. I just read between the lines. I got you. Let's speak of the Showdown. Let's speak about this. And my very in-depth and very comprehensive notes on the run sheet really, really summarize this game perfectly. I've got 4 points. Port bad, Rankin good, Philthorpe, no, not even Philthorpe, Riley good. So I could be talking about Riley O'Brien, but I wasn't. And Showdown voting bad. They're my kind of 4 main takeaways from this. And as someone who watched the game, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, watch it in depth. Watch it all in depth.
And the replay.
Yeah. And the replay, yes.
And
the replays. Yeah. And the replays. Let's talk about the prison bars, in a different story. What about them? Mate, they reeled them back out just to lose against their crosstown rivals by 30 points. If that is not shame on that jersey, yikes.
Yeah, it's quite funny. It's funny, though.
That is tough.
It's
tough. Okay. But in all honesty, if you haven't figured it out, I did not watch that game because just didn't watch it. I can't watch every game of football every week, and that was a game I did not watch.
And I knew he didn't watch it, and I wanted to throw him under the bus, and he handled it superbly. So well done.
It was terrific. It was
a very good deflection. I like it a lot. But no, I caught bits of it. Obviously, I'm a massive proponent of, regardless of the game, free to air over Foxtel on Saturday nights every time, just because I just like the production of it better. And more often than not, there's a game at if there is a game at the G, it's on 7, and I like watching games at the G. But regardless, Port. I mean, we all know your thoughts on Port, so I won't ask you because once again we're tight on the clock. I mean, I would agree with his comment again. Rowan on point once again. They're similar to a lot of rivalries and derby games in a sense. They come by, and it doesn't really matter about form. It doesn't really matter about kind of what's happened so far in the season. It's literally who wants it more on the day. And I would tend to agree when it comes to the fact that Port aren't a tough team. I mean, we saw that contest very late in the game. Travis Boak shirked the contest. Brody Smith gathered and took a bounce and sent Adelaide inside 50 again with 5 minutes to go, whatever it was, and that pretty much sealed the game. Nathan, if you'd watched that, you would know what I'm speaking about. But I feel like that contest kind of epitomised. I know, funny enough, I would show you, but AFL are really cracking down on highlights, and I don't want to get Terry a copyright strike, so let's not do that. I feel like it kind of epitomised. That contest epitomised the whole game for me in a sense. Adelaide just looked more organised. They just looked tougher. They looked more willing. They willed themselves to every contest. And when you've got that kind of effort and that almost intangibles solid and locked away for the first half, or for the middle third and the back third into the defence of the midfield, when you've got Riley Philthorpe and Isaac Rankin kicking goals out of their ass, kicking 10 between them, they're going to be hard to stop. Some of the goals, especially that goal from the contest from Rankin, was superb. Their set shots and their goal kicking in the last quarter was picture perfect as well. So when the pressure was really on them, they performed. And I think it's a massive concern for Port. Obviously, so many players have come out this week about whether Ken should stay, whether he should go. It's a really messy situation. But overall, I think it's a game that should be looked at in isolation, because a lot of I feel like in isolation, this game should be looked at in isolation. I was going to say, because it is a showdown. If it's not backed up next week, in terms of if there's no response from Port next week, and if Adelaide don't back it up, I feel like that adds even more fuel to the fire of just looking at this game in isolation. But concerning for both parties, I think. Quite concerning. Or not concerning for both parties, concerning for Port. and very optimistic about Adelaide because they showed toughness, but they also showed the ability to break Port down and break them down with talent and with just raw talent and just being able to execute in front of goal, which in high press scenarios in derby games is quite tough to do.
Yeah, I can agree to look at it in isolation, but that's sort of the perfect game this week against Sydney to.
Ooh, what's going on here?
Cool,
My
just,
apologies.
changing the show.
There we go.
But again, against Sydney,
Bring up some other stuff.
look, if they get beaten by any more than 30 points, that's it for Hinkley. And it goes back to what I said. What are they playing for? And like I said, they lost their opportunity when they lost those 2 prelims in a row. That kills your mentality. Last year just proved that they were like mentally pretty damaged from those 2. And everyone thought, it's just going to change because it changes, right? It just has to change. We got fooled in the first round. I didn't get fooled, but people got fooled. Well, no, they got smacked by Collingwood, and then they lost to. I mean, this is why I half agree with the isolation thing because. Like, I understand the rivalry thing because Carlton have been crap and they still put up a fight against Collingwood that they have done that in previous years, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, it's Adelaide. Like, they're not bad Adelaide, but if Port, they think they've turned the corner and they've improved and they're going to be back in the top 8. Well, Adelaide's a team they should beat. Like, regardless of I know it's always going to be competitive, right? But I thought even in a competitive game, their talent should still beat Adelaide's talent.
I agree.
But then where you go back into isolation is the whole thing. Well, Adelaide wanted it more, and that's why they won. So it's hard to look at it. But then Sydney this week will just prove what you said at the end.
Yeah, if and this is quite funny. Adelaide cheer squad singing the
I did say this.
That's quite funny. I write that. If obviously Port Adelaide smacked Brisbane, I wouldn't say won against Collingwood because Collingwood obviously have been quite good this season. If they'd at least put up a fight, lost by maybe 3 to 4 goals, 5 goals, and this exact showdown performance happened, well, would your opinion of them be different, same, worse, better, or does it not change regardless?
No, I mean, it would change because if Collingwood have proved they're a good side, as much as you don't want to agree, but they have to prove they're a good side. And if they'd put up, because it was in Melbourne, so a 3-4 goal loss, you probably look at it and say, okay, they've backed that game up against Brisbane as best as they could. It's always going to be hard to beat Collingwood in Melbourne. If they lose against Adelaide, I don't know. I would probably be on the fence, just knowing my views on them, but that never happened. And I
didn't. You're right.
I just don't. When's this change going to happen? Like, where's this change coming from?
Look, I know Terry's watching, so I know he's fuming at what you're saying right now because this very nearly turned into Port Adelaide abroad last year or the year before. I don't see a world in which they aren't competitive, because last year, despite the first 5 rounds, they were competitive. You can't say that they weren't, right? They really nearly made the top 8 from being 0-5, right? Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I agree.
There we go. He can admit that at least. So I don't see a world in which they roll over and lie down. I always believe that they're going to be there. And the talent, like you said, the talent should have beat Adelaide on the weekend. And I think maybe while it shouldn't beat Sydney, if we probably should have done my research in terms of if I knew I was going to bring this topic up. But if we look at their fixtures, right? Like you said, they've got Sydney on the weekend, which is going to be tough. That is, where's that? That's over there as well. So that's going to be even tougher. The Bulldogs at home should be winning that.
Yeah.
They've got West Coast at home, should be winning that. Then they've got St Kilda at Marvel, which is probably going to be a little bit tough. I don't see a world in which they roll over and won't be competitive. So that at least gives me maybe not a safety blanket in a sense, but gives me the notion of thinking, okay, this is why I'm looking at this result in isolation, and also because of how good Collingwood have been so far this season, I'm taking that result not in isolation, but it was a bit of a perfect storm because we've seen results similar to how we saw, similar to how we saw. We spoke about another team about looking at their results in isolation earlier, Geelong. Oh no, Brisbane. Sorry, Brisbane. How we spoke about like their result against Melbourne potentially doesn't like it was a great performance, but it doesn't represent the rest of their season potentially.
Yeah.
Similar to what I think about Port. Similar to what I think about Port. I don't think this result is going to typify the rest of the season. I think we're going to see more often than not. We're going to see the Port Adelaide against Brisbane than we saw on the weekend.
I don't know. I can't agree because they're always going to be competitive, right? Like naturally, that team is not.
Yeah,
they're not shit enough to not be competitive. But like, what's the goal of a football club? To win premierships. They cannot beat the teams who are actually trying to win a premiership.
yeah.
They always fail. They are mental. Like they mentally just don't have. Like they can't do it. Collingwood should like if you cannot beat if you are losing to Collingwood by that much, and look, Collingwood are great. But, like, you should be making a game out of that at the very least. Like, what are they playing for? That's my... Like, what is that team playing for?
So
to make finals, and that's, like, that's good. That's fine. Ken stays.
Well, do you think if they lose, he goes 4 rounds into the season?
This week?
Yeah.
Yes. He's not leading them in any premiership direct... What... You can sit here and tell me Ken Hinkley is leading them to a premiership.
But is like you can't be looking at that from the perspective of only that. Do you know what I mean? Like there's more to just premiership or nothing because there's a road in between it, right? And you've got to be.
But they've done that. They made the 2 prelims. That was their time. They failed miserably 2 times in a row, and he's done nothing since then. He's done nothing to show that they're still going to like push at all.
So do you think there's no reasonable future in which Port Adelaide can contend for a premiership under Ken Hinkley?
No.
It's a big call. I disagree.
I disagree. Look, if they beat Sydney, don't talk to me. But
yeah,
look,
that's a difference.
And if they, but you know, like that Sydney result, if it's more than 5 goals, why would you keep him?
So would you waste the season?
The culture will not change. I assume so. They probably have a team to make the top 8, but they're not like this team should be contending for a premiership if you go off what they've done. It's practically the same team as it was a couple of years ago, you know, a few variations within. And if anything, they've gotten some pretty good inclusions this year. Like they haven't evolved since then. Like they've simply gone backwards when you'd assume a team who makes 2 prelims in a row should be only getting better, learning off their mistakes. But they got mentally broken. They were mentally broken from those 2 losses. And
do you think it was that? Do you think it's a mental block? It's got nothing to do tactically or personnel-wise. Do you think it's a mental block? Because if it's a mental block, I can kind of agree with you in the sense that there is no way in which I can overcome that. Because I think to overcome a mental block, it takes a complete change in culture. Yes,
but that's what I mean. That's why
this is what it was.
There you go. But that's why it's a mental block because you've still got the same personnel that took you through that time. How that if they like, I'm not saying a new coach will change everything. We can't predict that, but it would still be someone fresh. It's sort of the start of something different. You've still got that same list who got to a prelim, so we know they have the ability to go that deep. But it's not working anymore. That what they did is not working. We look at the Brisbane game now and think, oh, well, looking at Brisbane, that's probably what they should have done. But then you look at Collingwood, it's like, 60 points.
So if they come out and beat Sydney, firstly, you're probably not going to
fair play. Then no, look, if they beat Sydney, fair play. They might. They will change my opinion because then will it happen? Yeah. I haven't. It's just like, come on, they didn't beat Adelaide.
Yeah, but Yeah, but they didn't beat Adelaide. But once again, I'm like, I don't know if you're looking at the game. I think you should look at the game in isolation because of what I've said about it being like a
Yeah.
rivalry game. But talent and personnel wise, firstly, if you sack Hinkley, the season's gone. The players are going to down tools. They're going to be bad. I think because I still think there's something there when it comes to connection between players and coach. I still think there's something there. So if they lose the coach, I think they're going to down tools. I don't think it's a thing of they lose the coach and it kind of lifts them. I think he'll do the opposite, kind of like what showed with Carl in 2019, for example. I think the opposite of that will happen. But I do agree if it's a mental block, then I would agree that they need to get rid of him in order to fully refresh and kind of cleanse the scars in a sense. And by doing that, you need to get rid of a lot of people, and it probably takes a rebuild to do it.
Yeah, I think they're doomed either way this season. Whatever happens, I just don't ever. I don't see it turning around. He has to go at some point. Let's leave it at that. I'm looking at the title. Like let's just leave it at that.
We only got one more thing. We only have two more things to speak about, and
yeah,
one of them
we take 20. Yeah, but we take 20 minutes per thing. So
yeah, right. Yeah, so we should probably put the kettle on if you're watching. Yeah, we should probably get Terry. Can we do a part 2 of this tomorrow? Because we're apparently not going to finish. Let's speak about West Coast briefly, and then we'll touch on the MRO, and then we'll wrap things up. The West Coast are the unluckiest club in the AFL. The reason I bring this up is because their injury list is. I mean, we thought Carl's was bad last year, right? This is absurd, and it was absurd on the weekend as well, where they lost like 6 players or something. Their injury list currently sits with the main names of the players that will potentially play: Campbell Chesser, Jamie Cripps, Harry Edwards, Jeremy McCubbin, Nick Naitanui, Liam Ryan, Luke Shuey, Alex Witherden, Elliot Yoza-Test may play this week. And considering what happened on the weekend, it was really, really stiff. Gov out for quite a while with a hamstring, I'm pretty sure. Shuey as well out. Ryan out. Like big players. Do you want to give your honest thoughts on West Coast, or do you want to be diplomatic?
Look, same with Geelong. When a team's so good for a while, I'm not. I just.
You don't care.
Look, I don't care. They don't really know what suffering is. They don't understand.
No, they do.
They do, but not for. It hasn't been for a while. To be fair, I guess you've seen it a bit. Look, to be honest, those are big outs, but were they playing superb football with them all anyway? Not really. It wasn't making a drastic difference to their side.
That makes me feel even worse for them because they sucked even with those players. Do you know what I mean?
Oh well.
Oh, you're so mean. Let's move on. They're gonna have to get the COVID top up players like what they did last year.
Either way, just go through the waffle. That's all right. Just use the waffle team, the Peel Thunder. Maybe that's Freo's. Whichever waffle team.
No,
is
I think Peel's West Coast. I think Peel's West Coast. Get Will Schofield back. He's a man that does a great podcast. So let's finish up with the MRO and also just a quick update. Melbourne City have gone 2-0 up, and I think that all been confirmed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's. I don't know if you wanted to. I don't know if you didn't want any spoilers for that, but there you go.
No, look. It's just a good thing to know not to turn it on now.
Yes, there you go. Let's speak about the MRO. 2 main things that have come out from this week. Of course, one involving Carl's own Black Acres, the other one involving North Melbourne's Griffin Logue. So obviously 2 players who will, 2 suspensions that will have an impact on the game. That happens on Friday. Thoughts, opinions, etc., on both. Start with Logue. I thought it was a little bit stiff, to be honest.
They were both stiff, but I'm in like 2 minds because it's like if you don't give them, it's like, well, where's the consistency then? You know? But I'd rather them be given just based off the fact that they will maintain that consistency, but they never do. So,
I agree.
You know, I mean, I both think they probably should have gotten off, but I'm not angry they didn't get off. Like, it's just I hate talking about MRO. Like, it's an awful conversation because it's just like there's never an answer. It's always if, but what if?
Maybe, yeah. Should we just stop speaking about? Maybe I should stop putting on the run sheet.
Wouldn't be opposed to that idea.
Yeah, maybe we'll stop speaking about the NRL. Let's wrap things up. Oh, look, we're under an hour. I wonder what that is. I wonder who calls that. Should we go back to St Kilda and finish that and finish what we were speaking about there? Or not?
I'll spend another 15 minutes on that. Go to the tips.
Okay, let's go to tips. All right, let's go to tips and let's wrap up. So, like I said at the top of the show, I did actually go back and do my job effectively and go back and look at the tips. I did do them whilst at uni, so forgive me if they are wrong. But if they're wrong, I don't really think anyone's going to go back and check. So, this is what we're taking as fact. So yeah, round 4 tips. Before we start, let's go through round by round what we tipped, and then we'll look at the total. So in round 1, not a good round. You had 3 correct. I had 2 correct.
That was a shocker. Oh yeah, 2. I thought 3 was bad.
Oh, in round 2, better. I had 5. You had 6.
Making a soccer scoreline out of this stuff, it is
not bad.
Awful.
Round 3, I had 3. You had 5. So that brings the total.
Okay. Yeah.
That brings the total to 10 for me and 14 for you. So you've taken an early lead. But it's all right. It's okay.
We're averaging what? We're averaging what? 3 around, 3, 4 around. That's
3 around would be 3 times 3 would be 9, mate. So
I said 3 or 4 around. Just
okay. 3 times 4 is 12.
Says the one who's like, I could never be an accountant. No good with math, but you're good at math when you need to be.
Yeah, exactly. I'm good at everything when I need to be. All right. Let's do this. Let's do this how we always do it. No explanation because we might go over 4 hours. Brisbane versus the Pies at the Gabba. You first.
Collingwood.
Brisbane.
Where's that coming?
Oh, shut up. Okay. I can't wait to see who he predicts now. North Melbourne, Carlton.
North.
Oh,
North
what a
by
surprise.
50.
No, what a surprise.
A full-on belting, mate. A full-on belting.
Carlton win. Adelaide versus the Fremantle Dockers.
Tough one, Adelaide.
I'll go with Dockers. Richmond Bulldogs, G.
Richmond.
Yeah, Richmond. Yeah. St Kilda, Gold Coast at Marvel.
St Kilda.
Gold Coast. Sydney, Port Adelaide.
Swans.
Port Adelaide. Essendon, GWS.
Essendon.
It's at Marvel, Essendon. West Coast, Melbourne. Melbourne, good Monday. Waste of Monday, I should say.
Hawthorn did it last year, but I don't think it will happen again. Geelong.
I'll go Geelong. I purely went for Gold Coast and Port Adelaide to spite you. Just to spite you.
I'm something like is I don't like. I feel Gold Coast might.
No,
I always think they might, but they don't. They don't. They never turn up.
They never turn up.
It's
the famous last words, everyone. They never turn up. Watch them belt
in Melbourne. You changed my words so much, but they don't turn up in Melbourne.
They don't turn up.
The
game's in Melbourne. The game's in Melbourne.
They don't turn up in Melbourne. Yeah, you're saying they don't turn. I'm not saying they don't turn up at all. They just don't turn up in Melbourne.
Backtracking, Matt. Nice backtracking. If Gold Coast and Port Adelaide win, go and follow the rest BA on Twitter because there's going to be some content. And I don't think I am doing anything this Saturday. I don't have anything planned. But if I am out and about gallivanting and I may have some cordials in me, mate, you're not going to hear the end of it on this show as well.
I'm prepared.
Yeah, well, you've made your bed. You have to lie it now. Let's finish things up. Thank you all very much for watching another show. This went off the rails plenty of times throughout. We're getting more and more unhinged as the weeks go on, and we're only in round 4. So round 23, we're going to be ripping each other's heads off. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure you Follow both of us on Twitter at Ari_Y_Stammer, at Nath Seppi. There you go. I know your Twitter at, and you know
That was
not.
good. That was good.
Follow the rest BA on Twitter and TikTok as well. Make sure you subscribe to the Blue Board YouTube channel. Like the video as we go over an hour, and I'm really happy we have. Subscribe to the Blue Board YouTube channel. Like the video. Thank you very much. See you guys next time. Goodbye.